Hello and welcome to The Dive, presented by Honda, Season 5, Episode 28.
28!
See, I've been missing that because Jad always used to do it that way, you know?
Oh,
Kobe does a more regular
emphatic
number. It was
number?
always just an emphasis on the number.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Which number, though? Because there's a number for the season and for the episode.
Nope, just the episode.
Interesting.
Yep, not the season. Season didn't matter. The LCS regular season is done. Doesn't matter. It's done. Over.
It does matter, though, because it qualified teams for the championship.
True. Playoffs are coming, though.
There's seeding as well.
Yep.
Also
All
true.
mattered.
May I say, Mark, you look great today.
Thanks. I just tried a little something different.
It's just mixing
Not a big
it up.
change. Just
The payoff
Try and find
of the
myself.
bets finally here. Mine was from spring when we were remote, and Mark wanted
Yeah, that's a
Sorry,
good... We're not switching the...
Mark wanted me to
Wow.
wait until we
off.
were
I'm gonna
back
come
in
on,
person. So to recap on my lost bet, Mark gave me the entire field versus Cloud9 for winning the championship, and I was wrong. Apparently, the better part of that bet is Cloud9.
You're an idiot.
Yeah.
It's clearly when you have 9 teams versus 1,
Yeah.
you should just pick the one.
But they're
Exactly.
both 9.
I tried to do that again with
TSM.
with Kobe and TSM, and they did finish first.
But they didn't keep first the whole time, and that
Not
was
even
your
close.
bet.
They
were
lost
gonna...
me the bet on the first week I made the bet.
Yeah, Mark's bet was that TSM was going to stay in first place the whole
entire
time.
regular season.
Yeah.
You know, I must say, my hair looks more like I want to speak to the manager and less.
It does.
It's
less
like your latte
I'm
came out
Ezreal.
wrong, and you have a strong opinion about it.
I mean, Azael does have strong opinions about lattes, so at least it fits.
Do I?
Yes, it's canon. You can't take it back.
Okay.
The first rule of improv is you can't say no.
Yes,
You'd have to
and.
say yes. Yeah, exactly. It's yes and.
Well, luckily we're on a podcast and not improv. And I can say no.
How dare you? You're fired. I'm going to talk to your manager.
All right. So moving on from the bets, Doinb, there's been a lot of talk about, he gave an interview talking about putting in 14 hours a day, what it takes to basically remain on top, like absolutely grinding. There's a lot of people have kind of known this about LCK, known this about LPL. And of course, when there is like a hot topic in the community, a lot of people tend to weigh in.
I got relatively strong opinions on it because there's a couple angles. It's like, one, is this what you should be doing? And then there's the community like trying to tell people not to do it. And there was like this weird thing about like free time and this and that it felt like the conversation kind of went all over the place.
Yeah.
But for me, at least, talking about wanting to be the best and putting in the time, I mean, like, you can say that, like, yeah, it's not healthy. It probably causes burnout. It probably takes years off your life, 50 years from now. Like, that's probably all true. But at the same time, like, a lot of these people are making the choice to try and be the best right now. And if you go back and look at the interviews by almost every single winner of Worlds I can remember, the players say this. You go back to Season 3, Faker and Piglet said this. Season 4, you had Looper and Acorn and them talking about, yep, I slept like 4 hours a night. Season 5, SKT again. Season 6, Crown and Samsung. I might skip one.
SKT again.
SKT again.
SKT again.
Then Season
And
7's
again.
Crown. Yeah. And then Season 8, I forget who it was.
IG.
IG.
Yep.
You can ask them about it.
Yep.
Yep. Doinb. Yep. It's what you need. And maybe there's another path forward that is more efficient and more friendly to your time and mental health and even long-term health. But no one knows what that is yet. No one's found it yet. And so it seems to be like this is the path forward to being the best.
And I mean, like I had kind of a strong reaction to this because like I feel like I've lived it a bit, and my take was basically like, I tweeted about it, and some people were agreeing with me, some people are like, you're an idiot, right? As
Both those things are true, by the way.
As is norm.
You're right and an idiot.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And my take is basically, just like trying to be the best at something. Like when we're talking not
literal
good,
best.
not good, not great, the literal best in the world, it is just inherently unhealthy because, like, by definition, you are going above and beyond what is normal, what is reasonable. You are doing what others are unwilling to do to try to eke out every tiny little advantage. Like, you just can't live a balanced life when you're doing it. I never lived a balanced life when I was doing it, or anything even remotely close to it. I think it's true of pretty much all these people, because at the end of the day, everyone who is at that level, who is at like world championship level, is gifted. Right? Like, everyone has some inherent level of talent. And then it becomes, what can you do with that gift? How hard can you work? How far are you willing to go? It does not guarantee success if you work hard. There's mitigating factors, there's luck involved, there's teammates, there's contracts, there's all kinds of stuff. Yeah. But the people at the top unanimously work ridiculously hard. And I've always just kind of had the opinion that it's just like, at the end of the day, it just feels egotistical to think that you can work way less than someone else and still be better.
I'm going
right?
to work smarter than you. And it's like,
and that helps, right? Like, sure, 12 hours of bad practice is probably worse than 6 hours of great practice.
Yeah.
Like, your 12 hours of solo queue is worse than my 6 hours of scrims. Yep, sure, okay. But, you know, their 12 hours of solo queue is actually 6 hours of scrims and 6 hours of solo queue. So they just did more solo queue than you. Oh, look, they passed you. Like, I know of players who it's like, you know, when they want to learn a new champion, they'll be like, oh yeah, I played some lane tests. Like, I feel comfortable. And it's like, cool, so you've never team fought with Gwen? Nope. All right, well, that's how much practice you put in, so good luck carrying late game. And it's like, well, this is why solo queue, for all the haters, matters, right? Because, yeah, solo queue is, it is not a scrim, it is not a match. How many Gwen matches has everyone played in every pro league? Like 7 at most? Cool. How many team fights have you fought? Gwen into Ezreal. Literally 0. All right, cool. Well, guess what? You're against Ezreal in the first round of Worlds, and you've never played the matchup? Oh, I guess solo queue mattered after all, right? And it's like, this stuff matters. It does. Like, the effort you put in, the time you put in is relevant. And yeah, if you're going to practice worse because you slept for 1 hour and your body doesn't, like, actually, like, process the lessons, then you're practicing very stupidly. Yes, indeed. But, like, assuming you're getting, like, the right amount of sleep and, like, you're not pissing off your teammates by being sleep deprived and angry with them, it's like, okay, well, find the hours to put in more work. You're going to be better than the person who didn't.
I think especially for League, because a lot of people start bringing up examples from other situations where they're like, look, people are healthy and the best in
Chess.
other sports.
Chess, a lot of people are bringing.
Yeah.
They play 4 to 5 hours a day.
Yeah, well, guess what? Chess doesn't change that much. You know, like, there's still a lot to study. I don't want to minimize chess's changes and, you know, difficulty or whatever, but in pro sports, chess, whatever, you don't have to get a patch that changes everything you know every 2 weeks. And not quite everything, but there's massive seasonal turnover between seasons that changes how you play. There's tweaks, there's new champions introduced. There's more change in League than I think most other, you know, like, things you're going to compare to other than other esports themselves, just because patches are so different than rule set changes and anything else. And so it becomes a necessity to play that much to be the best in especially League of Legends and other esports, because guess what? You need to put those hours in again to relearn the things that changed on you. You can't just get back into practice shape, which
Learning
is
Gwen,
Yeah.
the example just used, right?
Right, yeah. Like in basketball, you like get back into practice shape and you're largely fine because it's muscle memory you've built up through 20 years of playing. There's no muscle memory for a new champ. You have to build it.
And the ranges change. I think, like, college and BA, I think, have different distances and heights and whatnot and everything else. But to the point about chess, though, my understanding, and I'm a little bit out of my expertise here, but, like, the more popular chess formats are now, like, very, very fast chess formats. Like long form, like 20-minute clocks or whatever, which I think is, like, a fairly long chess game, is like, yeah, that game hasn't changed much in a long time, but, like, oh, people are playing speed chess now, right? And playing bullet chess now. And it's like, oh, well, it turns out it's like a really different way of playing. And you are going to get reps. Like, it is going to be helpful to practice that one and get better, because, like, the strategies and tactics don't work the same because it's much more intuitive, and that's going to require you building the reps out. And I know you in your Twitter convo linked out something about Tom Brady. And it's like, oh, yeah, that man actually works 16 hours a day.
He just didn't throw the football 16 hours a day because, yes, guess what? You can't. But like, it was training and going to physical therapists and getting, you know, like getting cryo recovery and watching footage. And like, you know, I'm not saying someone needs to literally be like hand on mouse and keyboard playing League of Legends all day, every day. But like, I do think to become the world champion, you need to be watching, thinking, talking, playing all day, every day. And I think that's just the reality.
Watch some Canyon VODs. Go watch, okay, now we're in a situation like we're going to use LCS postseason, another example. Cool. You are now into 1 opponent per week. Okay, cool. Who is anyone going to watch all of Impact's ProView games? Like, Impact, you're up against, I want to say Fate God. Is that accurate?
Yep.
Yeah. It's like, cool. How many Fake God games and vice versa are you going to watch hitting that match? Now, EG's probably winning that one anyway, right? So it's like, it doesn't really matter in that case, but in the TLC 9 game. All right, Alfari, how many Fudge Pro Views are you going to watch? How many Blabber Pro Views are you going to watch? You don't have to play solo queue if you don't really want to, but like, how well do you actually know Blabber's habits? Because guess what? You got first blood in 5 out of 5 games in the finals last time. You want revenge on that one? Maybe? All right, well, guess what? There's stuff you can do that's not mouse on keyboard.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just such an interesting discussion to me because it's like, it's something I feel pretty strongly about, you know, and there is obviously like other aspects to it. You know, like Magnus Carlsen, world champion chess player, you know, he played chess for 17 years before he became the world champion. League of Legends hasn't been out for nearly that long and also has changed like an enormous amount from like when it came out to now, right? Like, and even every year there's significant changes. So I do think that's part of it. The other thing I want to make clear, and I did say this on Twitter as well, is that like, I'm not advocating for this lifestyle. I'm not saying that like you should do this and like everyone needs to like, you know, give up your whole life and grind your life away to do this. it's absolutely fine to want work-life balance.
Yep.
I want work-life balance.
Yep,
I want
same.
to have other things in my life. I want to spend time with my
I
wife.
would be the
and walk
world's
my
best at
dog
anything
and-
ever.
Yeah.
I've come to terms with that.
and it's like, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? And there's also nothing wrong, like I don't think with a pro not wanting to do that, right? Like,
Yeah.
your goal can just be to be a pro and maintain that, and I think that's great and that's respectable. I just think that if you truly want to be world champion, that's what it takes. And and I get that some people will be burned out, and and that's negative long term. And also people's like how much they can take is just different, right? But like if X person, if Doinb can practice 14 hours a day and maintain that and not get burned out, and you can practice 6 or 8 hours a day and not get burned out, like I'm not saying you shouldn't adhere to that. You should listen to your body. You should prioritize your mental and physical well-being above everything else. But at the end of the day, the reality is just the guy who can withstand practicing twice as much gets an advantage. And you need every tiny little advantage plus the luck plus all the X factors to be able to be a world champion.
And there's a lot of people who do this regiment and don't become world champions.
course.
Like
Sure.
tons of Korean pros and LPL pros have given it all, come up short. And I think that's like the part that's, it's a bit of confirmation bias, but I also think it just speaks to like how hard everyone is trying to be the best, and like one person ends up, or 5 people end up getting there.
And like, obviously doing that work, it doesn't guarantee anything, right?
Yeah.
Because there are things that you can't control. It's like somewhat nature, somewhat nurture, right? Like I do just believe that like some people are just lucky and born with like better skills or better ability to like understand and adapt or read the information or intuit things or whatever. And it's just, you just have to like, but I do believe that you will never know for sure. Like if you are at a really, really high level, like if you are a pro and you're a really good pro, you will never know for sure if you can be like the actual best unless you put in that work. And that's just a decision that like everyone has to make for themselves and be comfortable with.
Covers it pretty well.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. Battle for the Soul of the LCS. There was a Peter Dunn interview, and I thought it was really, really cool. I just listened to a couple-minute clip that was on
Say his name.
Twitter.
The Travis Gafford interview with Peter Dunn.
Well, I was going to say that. I always credit Travis, even on broadcast. So Travis Gafford, Travie G, if you will. Did you know that I was the one who came up with TGI? He stole that from me in an interview.
I think you're owed royalties legally.
I am. Yep. So he stole my name, and the interview's probably still on his YouTube channel, so we can go check the tapes. But anyway, good old Travis Gafford here. He did an interview with Peter Dunn, and Peter Dunn was basically talking about, kind of like the big three, and TL, TSM, C9, and how TSM and TL play this kind of like slower, methodical style where they look to outscale, where they wait for you to make mistakes and they punish you and they capitalize on that. And basically they're able to do it because they have superior laning. They're better individual players than most of their opponents. But come international time, guess what? That's no longer true. And his belief is that when you play that style, you are then kind of like doomed to the 06 or to at least not doing well internationally, whereas the teams, like he did give some mention to Cloud9, but also of course he's talking about EG, his own team. He believes that when you are willing to play the aggressive style, take those risks, you have a much better chance against these top teams, even if you cannot be just as good in lane.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense if it's like, okay, you have a 0 to 100 skill rating for each team in the world.
Yeah.
But then, like most things, there's standard deviation. How much are you going to change game to game? If you're a team that's like a 70, Team Liquid,
Sure.
and you have a standard deviation of 5, you're not going to beat
Right.
the 80 team. But if you're 65 with a deviation of 20, like, hey, we might get 85 on our good day and take them down. And these ranges are always going to play. And I think that's a good way to think about how upsets happen is like someone hits their high end, someone hits their low end, boom, upset.
How did Albus Nox Luna get through groups in the Rocks Tigers G2 CLG group? It's like, well, they actually played really volatilely, and also the other 3 teams all underperformed. It's like that all had to happen, sure, but like teams are volatile, players are volatile. This happens. And then they got completely stomped 3-0 in the quarter, right? Because, H2K just like played to their level and they're 20 points higher. So it's like, of course they're going to win.
Yeah. So, I mean, I like the idea too, especially for North America, because it feels so long like many of our top teams have been that style that he is critiquing a little bit internationally. And I hope that this Team Liquid does not go back to that, which like their last game of the split against C9 was that style. And even though Jensen got like 8 kills, it was like, well, your team comp doesn't really do anything. It's just scales and tries to fight front to back, and that's it.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I always think it's really interesting, and I do think that we've talked about this through a different lens previously on the dive. Like, I agree with him first and foremost. More risky League of Legends, more aggressive League of Legends has a better chance to do well, I think, internationally, because realistically, you're probably not going to match up against the number 1 LPL seed or whatever in lane by lane. That's just like, they're just so good, and that's kind of the reality of League of Legends right now.
Yep.
So I do think it gives you a better chance. I think it's more exciting, and I also think that we have seen this through G2 when they were dominating Europe and started to do well internationally. Cloud9 when they started winning, people emulate the team that they perceive to be the best, and there was this huge shift in League of Legends with SKT was dominating. Everyone was trying to be SKT Junior and like basically play the map and play slow and have complete vision, and you just ended up being a bad version of that. And, when G2 and IG and FPX and all these teams came and kind of showed a different way, teams began to emulate that. And I think you do get a microcosm of that in the LCS. And because I kind of do prefer seeing our teams play aggressive and take risks, I want them to do well internationally. I think when the best team is an aggressive team, you're more likely to get more teams in the LCS playing that style, which gives you more practice, in these skirmishes and in these fights. And I think that's one of the advantages that a lot of the LPL teams have, is that there's so many teams that have incredibly skilled mechanical players and are willing to fight you at every single turn. And it turns out when you fight all day, every day, you get pretty incredible at it. So, you get these LPL teams that show up at Worlds or show up at MSI, and they've just taken like 1,000 of that team fight, and they know how to play it out, and they see these windows, and they believe in their execution, and it allows them to create monumental advantages.
Yeah, and you can go back and look at some of the closest games. Like I know you look at think back through Worlds at MSI forever, and it's like, okay, wow, we're in this like really tight game where it's like, wow, G2 could beat IG here, or CLG against whoever, and it's like, well, we're 25 minutes in and it's close. All right, we're about to lose now, aren't we? Right? Like it's the dread where it's like, if you don't snowball, like it's just going to happen eventually.
Yeah.
And before it was like, well, because the Korean teams just macro better. We're actually at a point in time where I feel like the actual sort of like macro skill set is not that far across among top teams, among all the top 5 regions. Like I really believe that. Like generally speaking, it's actually pretty close. But it's like, but then you have like the Shy against G2, and it's like, well, he found the flanks better than you guys did, right? Like, the individual players are what changed it around. You get, the really sick Mad Life hooks or whatever, or Faker's big outplays. It's like, yeah, you can just look at the demo review and you're like, yeah, they had better hands. They just had better hands. That's why they won. And that is now, I feel like that's a lot of like the phase we're in of the game, where the top teams just, really globally, they actually just have better hands. And that comes through in the end.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to talk about that, because back in the day when teams lost against some of these Korean teams, they'd be like, oh, wow, they got a bunch of kills, but they're down CS across the board and they're actually down gold.
Right.
Now when you watch teams lose against the better teams, it's like, oh, they got crushed in lane, or they got crushed in
5v5.
That early gank, just like the lane was instantly doomed. Like,
yeah.
There was that 16-minute win, IG versus SKT at MSI like 2 years ago, and it's like, they actually just ended the game.
The
Just got the
Draven
late
game,
phase.
I think it was, right?
Huh?
Yeah.
Draven game.
Yeah, it was Raven. It was like they actually won the game sub 20.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. Well,
Yeah.
when you can do that, that's how you know you're a world championship
I
team.
feel like snowballing too. Like that is one thing as well that these teams do so well, is push advantages. Because they are willing to take risks to do it, and they are so good mechanically, they can execute on these plays, right? Execute on these dives where people would actually just back off, and a lot of other teams, a lot of other regions, they'll pull off a dive. They'll both live with 10% HP, but like they saw the angle. You're dead now.
Yep.
Guess what? Your lane's over.
And towers are deterministic, right? Like minions are deterministic, and it's like, I know what 4 abilities you have. Okay, play around those. Like, I'm just ready for each cooldown. Cool. All right, we did it. Like, there's nothing else you can do. You can't out aim me, right? This isn't, Valorant, where it's like, well, it was a 6 shot and he shouldn't have won. We played it right. It's like, the League can be played deterministically, like to a certain degree.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So it's going to be interesting to see like how EG does, and kind of the fallout of that, to see if they actually can succeed. And Peter also talked about, hey, like even if they don't go to Worlds or they don't do well, that he hopes that they can like show or prove that this style can win and can be, kind of up there with the big dogs.
I'm excited. I think it can.
All right, moving on to the next topic. There's one other controversy in the social medias we got to talk about. This time involving 100 Thieves starting their academy roster on the last day of the LCS. The game did not matter to them, but it mattered to EG, who if they had won, they would have gotten third. That's what happened. And so some people reacted to it. Santorin in particular was like, this is disrespectful. And, there are different takes. C9 kind of memed it a little bit with Jack. And so in general, I think I aligned with the community sentiment I saw about it being like, hey, this is 100 Thieves' right to do what they want in the league by being in this position, by playing well enough that this game doesn't matter and they have their bye.
Yeah.
And so that's probably the closest take that I land on. I don't know how you guys feel.
That's my take as well. I'll kind of expand on my position slightly. So yeah, I think Under Thieves did nothing wrong. Like, to be very clear, if you want like a soundbite, it's that one. End of the day, like the job of each team is to do what's best for their team. Obviously, play by the rules, no cheating allowed, right? You know, all that fairness is required. But like, okay, well, you are Evil Geniuses, the LCS organization, the company. Like, you know, you care about, or you know, or your 100 Thieves, right? The company, whatever. It's like, okay, you want to do as well as you can. You want to be as marketable as you can. You want your academy players ready to go. Because, like, hey, if someone offers you a $7 million Abadaga buyout, maybe you take it, right? Like, oh, actually, that's going to make business sense for us as a company to sell Abadaga. Like, you know, we did smart scouting him, but this is now correct for us. So, like, well, we want Ryoma to be ready or whatever. But, you know, be just ready for every opportunity. How many times has Cloud9 had the understudy ready to go, right? Oh, wow, I can't believe they got rid of Impact. Well, Licorice got good by the end of the year. Oh, they got rid of Licorice. Oh, well, Fudge got good by the end of the year. And it's like, yeah, it turns out like scouting talent and rewarding them and getting them ready to go is like really, 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 really valuable. Even in terms of like making money because you can sell your players off for buyouts, but also just like being ready to go if like something happens. You know, we have Santorin who had migraines, which like that sucks for him. But it's like, okay, well, TL, you know, I hope Armeo's ready because he's going, you know, Alfari was having personal issues where he had to step away. It's like, well, I hope Jenkins is ready. And it's like, look, it's just correct for these teams to like have their academy players ready to go. And yeah, okay, they first and foremost went for the buy. They locked the buy. Okay, let's make sure our understudy's ready to go. They're going to bring a 6th player to playoffs. They're going to bring a 6th and maybe 7th player to Worlds. Yeah, have them ready, right? It's just correct to do so.
Yeah.
Did you have a different take? Because I got a little bit more I can put on top of his before you.
You can go for it.
I would say also not only like the player angle of your academy team, but also your starters. You get them a day off. Like, hey, good job, guys. You secured a buy. Go out and get Korean barbecue or whatever. And then also, I don't have to show you what I'm going to draft now. Like, great.
Sure.
Like, there's actually no reason for 100 Thieves, selfishly, to play their main roster. There's actually nothing that they get out of it, and it just hurts them, you could argue.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, unless you need the reps against EG, because that's going to be their opponent most likely, right? Is EG
right,
beats them
but
when they fight again. And it's like if you really need that practice.
That goes both ways, of course. So
it
that,
does.
like, yeah. So
But
like,
you could argue, oh, actually, you know, it's important for me. Argument, right?
yeah. So that is probably the main reason for me is like if I'm an outsider, I'm like, yeah, I want to watch the best League of Legends possible at every moment. If I'm on the team, I'm like, I'm doing me 100% of the time. I don't care what you think.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. Like, I think I'm somewhat in the middle. Like, I had to take similar to like what Santorin's was during Worlds, and I think a lot of people reacted pretty negatively to it. You know, and didn't agree with me. That's fair enough. You know, I've been in this position myself, and you know, like intentionally like lost games because it didn't benefit me, and I was already like locked into getting out of groups, and it was better for me to, you know, get 2nd seed because I got a better matchup in the playoffs, right? And it's like, is that the most honorable thing? No, it's probably not. But also, like, is it the advantage you have earned by like guaranteeing that you're already locked in? Yeah. And I'm not sure if this really was any sort of like gamesmanship from 100 Thieves, or if it's just purely like, hey, we want to develop our academy roster. Like, my interpretation, like, you know, I mean, Parth's tweet's also very interesting. 100 Thieves who play EG tomorrow has a lot of power over who their opponents is in playoffs. As a GM, I wonder, what would I do for my game tomorrow if my seed is locked and I think EG is a weaker team than C9? So, like, heavily implying that they're losing on purpose, right? To like essentially set up the bracket in the way that they want. Like, I don't know, you know, it's tough because I think that my understanding is we removed dynamic seeding because there was like that Golden Guardians TSM interaction where essentially with like the bracket
The
flip,
lower bracket gets funky.
exactly, like where the bracket got flipped and Golden Guardians beat TSM, then had to play them again and lost to them. Their like overall record against them was like 5-3 or whatever, but they're still knocked out. So it literally got changed to avoid that, is my understanding, and I apologize if I'm wrong. But like, so yes, dynamic seeding would fix what Parth is complaining about, but also like there's this other thing that they literally benefited from that everyone complained about that this current system is fixing. So it's like there is no system that is perfect in all regards.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I also just like I had a really adverse reaction to Parth's tweets in general. Like I just really didn't agree at all with what he was saying, because to me it just felt like just a bunch of complaining, right? You know, like his literal tweet is, our reward for getting first since his lot bracket is no choice in semis opponent, no dynamic reseeding. No, your reward
Is
that
EG.
is, well,
Other best team.
you dodge them. B, you start in the upper bracket, you get a bye, you win one best of 5, you are guaranteed Worlds, and guess what? if you get upset by a team like Clutch, like what happened before, now you're not out of playoffs. There's a lower bracket. You're still in it. Like the advantage is enormous. You're the number one team.
Yeah.
And like for me, it's such a head scratcher when like I get wanting a fair format, but like it already is so favored to the top two teams. Like it is insanely favored towards them as far as making worlds. And you're the number one team in the league. And you know, TSM has talked so many times about like wanting to win worlds and all this stuff. And I'm like, you're concerned about having to fight the 4th or the 5th seed when your supposed goal is doing well internationally and you literally have to win one best of 5 to get there. I'm just like, I just don't get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like,
I don't want to fight Team Liquid. I want to fight Dignitas after the upset.
I get the idea that like first versus second doesn't have many tangible rewards because depending on the teams, whoever you play might not be any easier than who they play.
But on average, it is.
But on average, it is. And other than doing dynamic seeding or choose your opponent or whatever it is, which are basically the same thing, so you're going to be changing the bracket around post lock. Yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. What do you, like, everything has a cost.
Yep.
And, like, right now, you're myopically like this. We didn't get anything better than 100 Thieves, arguably. But I don't know. Like,
yeah. You dodged the 2 other 18 and 9 teams in from summer.
Well, you want like the Korean playoff format that was awful where you had the gauntlet preceded with the number one team and you just had like, I didn't like that.
And they got no practice heading into the only match that mattered. It's like, oh, great.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of formats that, like, I don't know. It felt weird. I agree.
Yeah. I mean, the format is not perfect. It's not like there is no perfect format. I've played a lot of them. I do think that with double round like with double elimination though, when you're starting in the upper bracket, the best teams generally get there. Yes, there can be exceptions, but you have 2 shots. And generally like these systems that give more games and more chances most heavily favor the top teams, right? So like if I'm the number 1 seed and I'm starting with a bye in the upper bracket, I'm not even worried about getting to worlds. Like I think that should be, you know, that should be the least of your concerns. And if it is, then I don't know, that's a little bit concerning in and of itself.
We can segue to like the next playoff topic, which I know in our document is moving around a little bit, but I want to bring it up because it's talking about the fact that at least one of TSM, TL, or C9 aren't going to be top 3, aren't going to make worlds. One of them has to, right? There's one side of the bracket that's TL, TSM, C9. Someone's got to win that second round matchup. Other side of the bracket is Evil Geniuses, Dignitas, and 100 Thieves. Of course, one of those also must make it, which all seems fair to me, but it also means, you know, contrapositively, okay, one of those teams on that side is guaranteed to miss. And it's like, well, this is what happens when, you know, you got, right, so TSM got first. Okay, good job. You're in a really good spot. And then here's TL and C9 who floundered really heavily in summer, and their seeds 4 and 5. And it's like, well, they have to knock one of each other down to the lower bracket, and then one of them fights TSM, and then, well, there's only one way back in through the bottom half. So someone's not making it from that point on, and it's like, well, this is also your punishment for like not, you know, doing very well, right? And having like these 15 and 12 records is like one of those 2 teams, TL, C9, are probably the ones not making it.
Yeah, it is surprising, but honestly, I don't think those 3 teams have ever gone together, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep,
so
they've never.
It's actually expected. That's my conclusion. I'm actually not surprised.
It is interesting though, because it did feel like coming into this year, there was such big investments. You know, TL always spends big or has ever since they started winning. Like that's kind of been their thing. They're the Yankees and they're going to buy the best talent and they're going to try to create a championship team. And they've been successful at doing it, right? They won 4 in a row.
Yep.
You know, TSM and C9,
they spent the most this year.
They spent a lot this year. And C9 especially like have not really done that before, right? They've spent money, but they've never been like the big spender. They've been more the team that makes the controversial move where it's like, we're getting rid of Impact and bringing Licorice. We're getting rid of Licorice and we're bringing in the next guy. Like they have spent on Sven, and obviously there are
Vulcan
examples.
As well. Like
Vulcan as well.
They have been increasing. Like it's actually been an upward trend, right? Buying Vulcan the year before, buying Perks this year. Like they are now becoming the big spender.
Yeah.
And to be fair, like they had this drought for like 5 years of winning titles, right? Like they didn't win for so long. They won in 2014 spring and then stopped forever, right? And everyone else got their turns. Yeah. And then they finally came back, and it's like, oh yeah, they've won 2 of the last 4 titles now.
Yep.
And that's since, you know, right? They got one with Perks, they got one with the Vulcan, and it's like, oh, okay, cool. Like this is the new formula, and it has worked, I mean, pretty well for them.
Yeah, it has. And I mean, the Perks one is obviously like the $11 million deal, and Sword Art's like, you know, $6 million deal or whatever he is. These guys are huge acquisitions. So very clearly the expectation when you spend huge like that is you are going to do better than ever before, because you are spending more than ever before. You are getting, you know, arguably the best Western player of all time. You know, Perks or Caps is pretty much the argument, I think, at this point. And, you know, the expectation is that you kind of dominate. And So I do think through that lens, like whatever org does not make it, it will feel like a catastrophic failure, whether it's TL, TSM, C9, it doesn't matter, because all those teams have such high expectations. All those teams truly invested to try to buy like best in class talent. And, you know, they couldn't get every single player that they wanted because that's just the reality of the business. Like I know that they were shooting for some other players and couldn't get them, whatever, but all of them ended up spending huge. So I do think from that lens, it's going to be like a bit of a shocker for that fan base that doesn't make it.
You can basically write the same joke for each of them about spent X money and didn't make Worlds.
Sure.
And it works for all of them. You just got to change the number and the team name, and you're there. paid $10 million to watch Worlds at home, you know, or something like that.
Yeah, great. And on the other side, of course, you have you know, props given to EG and 100 Thieves. Obviously, 100 Thieves spent this year as well, right?
Yeah.
They bought out the entire.
EG also, I've heard their roster is like not cheap. There's
Not
like
cheap, yeah. It's just not in the you know, stratosphere, you know, 8 figures range is my understanding. But yeah, it's like, okay, you did a lot with comparatively less, and it's no surprise that the literal top 5 teams in the league spent the 5 most amounts of money.
Yeah.
Right? Like, turns out you can buy some talent and your team looks really, really good. Like, no one's, I would say, like mad at Immortals or Dignitas or whatever in terms of like, okay, you like clearly didn't have a very big budget this year, right? Like you didn't get that much from your ownership group or whatever, as far as I can tell. It's like, okay, well, we put together the best roster we could with the money, and hey, we made playoffs, or we made an upper bracket start. Cool. All right, let's see what you can do with it. It's going to be, you know, you're the underdog. Good luck.
Yep, totally. All right, Honda MVP. So we're actually going to talk about the real MVP.
Fine,
it's not going to be like a spin on it because the regular season is over. The ballots have gone out. I just saw my ballot, but I was recording Next Level earlier, so I have not actually submitted mine.
I submitted mine last minute.
Okay.
I need to cook it as long as I can.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so we have till tomorrow at noon. So we have.
Is that it?
Yep.
So you hope it's a well done ballot.
I thought it was Wednesday at like midnight. It's what it used to be, I think.
Too late. I don't know.
I think it. Well, anyway, it doesn't.
Mine's done. Who cares?
We'll figure it out. I'll figure it out.
So who's your MVP then, Phreak? What do you think?
So I went with what I talked about last time on the dive. My MVP is Spica. TSM have, right, this is a summer split record, so there's the weird kind of disconnect between like what are their standings right now and what is their standings in summer.
Yeah.
It's still lined up 1-1. Like the only swap is Immortals versus Dignitas. Otherwise, the summer record and overall record are matched basically. But it's Spica. I think he's just been outstanding overall. He's been, I think, the most standout jungler. Closer was right behind him in All Pro, to be clear. Like he's great, but I just think he's been consistently an outstanding jungler. He's been killing it overall. TSM, to me, are the best team in the league. Their record suggests that they're at least tied for that sort of honor. So I'm about it.
All right. I feel like junglers are overrated. Just in general. I've thought back on it. The Blabber ones, the Svenskeren ones, always getting MVPs. I think Yankos grabbed a couple. People always talk about how good junglers are. They're just playing on top teams with good laners. Junglers are overrated.
Okay.
But my MVP is Spica.
That was good. I like that.
I swear to God, I had this conversation. I forget who I was talking about. I was talking with like Hai and some other people on the desk one of these days, and we're just like, man, junglers get so overrated because what ends up happening is you get on a good team, your lanes start winning. You don't have to like babysit lanes that are losing or like go for these risky ganks. You can just like go for these invades that are more likely to work because your teams are like, there's so many advantages that a jungler will get on a winning team. More so than like everyone looks better on a winning team, of course.
Yeah.
But jungler by far has the biggest like, oh yeah, I look real good now. All my lanes win.
I get to steal blue buffs.
I get to pick 3v3s, and it doesn't matter because my team's here first. And like, and I think it leads to a bit of an overinflation of people's opinion of junglers. But I also can't snap out of it. Like, I think Spica played the best this year overall, or this split overall of every position, the most consistent. You know, mid laners, no one's stood out. Actually, Jizuke is probably gonna be my first All Pro, honestly. You know,
yeah, Jizuke is on my top 3 for MVP.
Yeah, top lane, like, yeah, Fudge is really good, but the team has struggled, and it's not like he's been perfect. You know, it's like I think it's Spica, but at the same time, I just made my own argument where I'm like, man, I'm about to give it to another jungler. I'm an idiot. I'm being duped again.
I also think a big part of why junglers look so good, it's like, okay, if you have a really good jungler on a really good team, the position also just naturally has the most choice.
It has,
right?
Tons of agency.
Like, you don't, like, even if you get counter picked in the jungle, well, my lanes are winning, so they can't invade me anyway. Who cares, right? Like, I'm playing Diana. Oh no, I don't want to fight the Olaf, but guess what? All my laners are better, so I don't have to, right?
We put a ward down, and where Olaf is, okay, cool, I'll give you bot scuttle. Like that. I'm down one camp. That's the summary of the counter pick.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. It's not like you're trapped in this like cursed lane where you're just getting slammed, right? Like, oh, I picked Vayne and he played Draven. Okay.
Yeah.
Like,
This was a 15.
Yeah. Like, it's one of those things. So it's like you choose where to go. If you are incredibly skilled, incredibly good, like Blabber is, like Speaka is, your lanes are generally winning, you go to the places where you are going to be successful, and then guess what? You're really freaking good, and so is your team, so you can execute on that. So I do agree that it is like somewhat biased to jungle in that way, but I also think that there's opportunities for laners to really shine because they can lock people in a matchup where they can exploit them. And so like that's the other side of the coin is like, when you have a mid laner who's just dominating everybody and it's like their opponent cannot say, I think I'm just going to go 3-man bot for a while, like I guess I just won't defend the tower, lane. Right? Like, and that's why there was a lot of argument for Alfari getting it in spring. Because this man just demolished everyone so friggin' hard and they had nowhere to go, right? They had to keep going back up there and losing to him some more. And so like there is that other side of the coin. But I mean, I think Speaka, it's kind of hard to argue against him. I do think that it's like, I have to think more about this before I lock it in, but I do think Abadaga should still be really considered. He was not as dominant towards the end, but there is that recency bias of like looking at like how he has done now. I don't think he has been playing bad at all lately, but I think he has been playing like just good. Whereas the first, I don't know, month or whatever of the split, it was like, holy crap, this guy slams everybody.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't think that should be overlooked either. Like, who do I think is a better team right now? TSM. Like who do I think is playing better over these last couple of weeks? Speaka. But if I'm trying to like give equal credence and equal value to all of the weeks, then Abadaga definitely has to be considered.
I think one thing about the recency bias is like, I think it's important to note on like did this person just have a bad game and just like run it once? Like, PoE had that game on Sindri where he died a bunch of times, just got picked off. Like, that doesn't actually change my opinion of how he's playing at the current level. He just had a bad game. I would say recency bias does matter to me a little bit in an MVP situation where it's like you should be improving over the course of the year. Like, I do actually tend to wait a little bit more towards the end of the year than the beginning. I don't want to forget that Abadage was a beast and, Closer was a beast and 100 Thieves was hard slamming everyone for the first half of the split. But at the same time, falling off to me is like, that's not what you should be doing. So it's like you're trending the wrong way, and that does matter to me, not just in terms of like, this guy played a 10 out of 10 game on week 2, and this guy played a 10 out of 10 game on week 9. Great. Yeah. But if your trend of performance is actually going up between them, like that's a better one right there for me. So I do treat it a little bit more for end of split.
Then if you're talking about end of split, why not more consideration towards EG, right? Who has basically just been slamming everybody for 4 weeks straight now? Yeah. Like, what about Impact? Impact has been being brought up. What about Jizuke? Like this guy, you said he was your first team all-pro mid laner. The team is literally trouncing everyone lately. Like, yeah, they've had some losses.
Whatever.
I'm being a bit hyperbolic, but like, they've been winning, what is it? It's like 12 of their last 14 or 13 of the last 15 or something to that effect.
Yeah. No, I mean, they're really hot. Don't get me wrong. I just wanted to see a little bit more down the stretch. Like the Immortals lost hurt, the TL lost hurt. Like if they had this insane, we have a better summer split record than everyone else. They don't. They're tied with the other top 3 at all 18-9.
Yep.
And to Speaka's credit, because I kind of just spent my whole time crapping on junglers. And I was talking about 3 winning lanes. He did not have 3 winning lanes.
Yeah, Lost doesn't really win.
Lost is not winning lane. PoE is picking weak control mages most of the time. He's actually a negative CSD and 4% player because he takes bad matchups to scale. Or not bad matchups, just not strong ones. Like Speaka actually had a really hard time navigating like Huni playing aggressive, my bot lane maybe needing help. PoE is not going to be able to help me that much when he's playing Victor into Lucian. Like I actually think he had a really hard job, especially early on in the split, to look as good as he did without getting that much help, as much as I just talked about junglers on winning team.
No, I mean, I don't think that's I got your really point. I think it's a good clarification, but like I got your point. Yeah. But I can also see how people would be like, you dummy, like Lost was losing. But I mean, it's definitely hard to argue against Speaka, but I'm gonna give it some more thought. I mean, to me, it does feel like it's between Speaka and maybe Abadaga as realistically, because I do just think that Abadaga was like just game warpingly good for a long time, right? And there was a lot of games where it was just like, well, okay, he's doing it again. Like, I guess 100 Thieves win. I think Closer is really good and had a really good, like first X part of the split, and I think overall he has been good, but he did have more bad individual games, I think, than Spica. At least that's my kind of like gut check impression. And overall, I kind of just rank Spica higher than him. So like, I don't think I can really consider someone that I don't have as number one in position for MVP.
Yeah. One last thing, just to chime in, just because no one asked, is I gut check my like All Pro and MVP votes a little bit, because I will then like tabulate them, and then I'll be like, okay, so how many points does each team have from All Pro?
Yeah,
right? Because like, because you get 3 points for first place and 2 for second and 1 for third. So like, I then go and say, cool, here are the standings, right? Right, top 3 are all tied. How many All Pro points do they have? And I'm like, does TSM have 2 All Pro points? Okay, I did something wrong, because there's no way they like everyone played to like a 4th place level and they got top in the regular season. So I'll like, let's try again. And in my case, like it lined up, but it's like it's always with gut checking. Like if Cloud9 somehow has like more All Pro points than TSM, I'm like, with 4 less wins, is this really true? And I will check myself. Yeah.
So you can, I do believe. So like in most cases, I think that is like generally true. But take extreme example. I have the literal worst bot lane league,
of course.
Right? It's like 10th. But my top side is so insanely good. It's like they could be dominating and worthy of like first team All Pro.
Right.
But still, a team that has, 4th or 5th best in every role is probably going to beat them, because maybe the hard 10th support and AD just get gapped every single game so bad.
Right. In this heuristic, 4th and 10th are worth the same point total, and obviously are relevant. And like, it's not hard and fast for like you must now end up in the thing, but I'll check that and be like, am I real? Of course. And it's worthwhile, right? Like, but it's like a vague thing I can look
I thought you were going to go in the other direction, which is sometimes for me, you do your things, and you look and you're like, does TSM have the best player in every position, or are they first? Like on their best splits? They're like, Darius is the best top, Odd1's the best jungler, Bjergsen's the best mid, and you're like, are they actually the best in every single position, or do they have good teamwork and they have a couple superstars that they play around well? I sometimes have to check myself on that, because there's definitely times where you're like, wow, this team's slammed.
Looking at the ballot afterwards is really valuable.
You're like,
just
but
for
I probably shouldn't do that.
Checking your biases and whatnot.
Absolutely. Well, the race for the last spot, Golden Guardians do come out on top with the big assist from CLG, which means CLG and FlyQuest have been eliminated. Rest in peace.
Ripperino.
Ripping pepperonis.
How did you feel about the final race? Are you like, do you think that the best team got in?
Yes.
Yep.
Certainly, and this is weird because the discussion I think keeps being like, hey, what about season long versus summer split? And at the end of the day, like, okay, well, all the best teams made it, but also spring matters, but also, whatever. So like, I think at the end of the day, the correct teams made playoffs in roughly the correct spots. It is weird because like Golden Guardians made their roster team just so late. Like if they play the entire year over with Licorice and Chime, like where would they be instead? Like would they have taken Dignitas' spot in 6th? Maybe roughly that's where they could have been, right? I don't think they would have taken over TL or C9 or anything.
They were
like
6-6 with Licorice, the most recent roster swaps, I believe.
And by comparison, like Dignitas were 1 over 500, but most of those wins were the old roster in spring, right? So it's like, and Immortals were under that mark with the same roster the entire year, or pretty much that. So it's like, okay, well, if that expands out, then in fact they are better than Immortals and Dignitas, and in fact that's where they would sit, right? So it's like, okay, that lines up with my expectations. End of the day, again, I think the right teams went through. I'm glad CLG won. Golden Guardians on the head-to-head against FlyQuest, for example. FlyQuest were also in a spot where like they were still sorting out the roster, right? So I still don't know how strong that team is, but the results are the results.
Yeah, I think both those two teams that didn't make it have two different areas to look at in their retro. I think for FlyQuest, their initial lineup that they put together, I was actually kind of optimistic about, and it felt like they started at like an okay level and just trended down. And I think you want to look at less about GMing and roster construction, more like, well, what happened internally? Is this the right pairing of players? Is it coaching staff? What happened? For CLG, I look at their roster construction, because even at the time, no one was really on board with it. Yeah, if you go back and look at everyone's reactions, it was like, this is a 6th or 7th place team. Now they ended up 9th, and it went even worse than expected, but no one had high hopes for CLG's roster, and it felt like it was constructed in the old method of not really getting any new blood in there, but not also getting a bunch of superstars, and you just had a bunch of veterans. And they apparently spent quite a bit of money. Yeah, so I think CLG place team needs to go back to the drawing board and be like, what was our goal? Was it seriously Worlds with that lineup? I think that would be surprising. I mean, I remember saying this when they first came out, because like I was really negative on CLG when we did our initial power rankings, right? Like I remember when we did that, we were pretty positive on FlyQuest. I think especially you and Kobe. I was wrong. Very, very positive. Well, I don't mean that as like a call out, just more through the lens of like, hey, like there's a mix of young talent. Jose Dioto did really well in his region. Licorice is this guy who's coming hot off Cloud9. Like, people saw the way up. People saw the thought process at least. With CLG, to me, like I truly believe
that was like almost a roster built like in fear of getting last. Like it felt like get known quantities, relatively big names, people who've been around for a long time that are going to be pretty good. And that's really how it felt like that when I was looking at this and I'm trying to parse like, what is the thought process here, right? It's like, you're not going to take any risks by getting the young person that you haven't seen. You're going to take the guy who's been there for 7 years or 6 years or whatever, and you feel pretty confident about. Finn being maybe the one exception.
Yeah, but he was just at Worlds.
He was just at Worlds.
Clearly good.
Yeah, and it just really felt like as you were saying, the old school way of building a roster, right? Whereas we have seen so much more now of teams willing to take chances on young talent. And to me, it's like there should almost be the two schools of like, do you think you can challenge for the championship? Okay, all in. And if you don't, then like start to build for the future, right? And CLG did neither and still did worse than everyone else who did. So that's why it feels like such a catastrophic failure. It's like you spent money, you got all veterans, and you're 10th place.
Yep. And it's why I like EG's format, right? EG are running an amateur team as well. It's how and why they brought up Danny. Like huge respect to Kelsey Moser and everyone else in the coaching staff there. Like making, you're like looking at me.
No, I wasn't.
Okay, you were like doing this weird smile, and I'm confused.
It was a pain.
Oh, okay.
He's a piece of tape stuck to his leg that was to help pull up the costume.
Oh,
yeah,
and I think it's causing him.
You're just like souring as I'm talking about each. I'm like, what did I say wrong?
Like my hand brushed the tape.
So it probably ripped off some of his leg hair.
That's why you're looking at each other all upset.
Well, I think Azael kind of saw me do it.
Well, I understood what happened, and I was just
I'm just comfortable. I have sandals on. Actually, it's a little cold.
My head is really uncomfortable. This wig is not.
You want to take it off?
No,
I'll give you permission.
No, you don't have.
I won the bet.
It's your bet.
It's okay.
It's my bet. You take that off.
I
want to see bald Ezreal.
I'll feel like I'll have like an indent on my head now. It's really uncomfortable.
But anyway, credit to EG.
That feels so much better.
Yeah, it looks great.
You look like you're some kind of like weird pimped out rapper. More so.
At least I'm not a Karen anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's a plus. Oh my God, that feels so much better. It was giving me a horrible headache, and it's really itchy. Not a fan of wigs, or at least like
that
$2 wigs that are like
wigs.
made out of like friggin' a Ziploc bag shredded up.
Probably, it's recycled. You're being good with the environment.
I'll bet you if you want like a real toupee, it wouldn't be so bad.
I don't have any experience.
Same.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll discover that
one day.
Yeah.
Playoff brackets.
Well, yeah. Anyway, credit to EG, right? Because their talent scouting was so good that in the span of a year, they put a roster together that is maybe the single best in the LCS. They spent 4th or 5th most and have the first best team, or considerably. It's like, that means you did a really, really good job with the money you were given. Your talent scouting was excellent, right? That you were able to buy players and pay players, essentially under what they're worth, or were able to develop them very well to beyond what you paid for them. Like, this is huge credit to what you did. Like nothing but 2 thumbs up. If I had more thumbs, I'd give them more. EG did a great job.
Yeah, big agree.
Yeah, I mean, I've been pretty excited for EG as an org, like since they came in, because I mean, they came in and their whole idea was like, we're gonna take down TSM, screw them, right? They were kind of came in hot, and I was like, well, okay, but then they at least were spending money, and I know that they had the goal of like. When I heard about some of the trades that they were trying to get, like I heard they were literally trying to buy like Chovy and stuff year 1 and like some crazy things, like they were swinging for the fences. I'm like, that's cool. I think that's fun because I will say I'm really excited for this playoffs through the lens of, even though I am somewhat like more down on 100 Thieves and like TL than I had been, at another time, because I think 100 Thieves has been trending down a little bit. TL just hasn't been as great throughout the split. Like I could still, like if you told me you're from the future and TL won the split, I'd be like, yeah, I can see it. If they have more than enough talent that if these players play to their level, like despite the fact that I think they're probably going to get slammed by
players
C9,
won lock-in. Like
they could easily win, right? So like I think there's legit 5 teams that you could tell me they were the LCS champions. I wouldn't be surprised. And I think that's so fun. It makes both sides of the bracket more exciting. It makes the entire like playoff run more exciting. And we could even just hop straight into the
let's
first
do it.
playoff
Let's
thing.
talk about it then.
EG versus Dig is our first matchup, I believe. That one feels probably like the most lopsided you would expect of any of the potential upper bracket matchups.
Sure.
Because Dig is like largely, I think, a holdover from spring as far as like where their record is. They did reach upper bracket. They deserve that based off the success they had in spring. But when you're looking at purely the summer record, they were 12-15. EG is 18-9, significantly better record as far as the eye test goes. EG looks significantly better. Like, I think EG is the hottest team in the league like now. And as a result, I do think this one is looking more one-sided.
I'm in a big agreement. I would probably expect a 3-0 because, like you're saying, I think for the most part, EG outclasses in every single position. The one area that I would give a potential in to Dignitas would be bot lane.
Yeah.
And not even that Neo's better than Danny as a whole, but in the early game, there's a weakness there in the bot lane, and that is where Dignitas attacks the most. I covered some of the stats when we were casting together about like how they have double digit at the time when I checked the stats. They were the only people with double digit first blood kills and assists in the bot lane. They are heavily played around. They don't leave lane very much. They mostly play aggressive things. Like they are very proactive in the bot lane. And Acadian's also a pretty, proactive jungler. And so like there's a world where Dignitas, if I was going to expect how they win, snowballs bot lane, has a lot of counter picks prepared, a lot of volatile matchups like we were talking about being important for upsets. And then it doesn't matter that your solo lanes are losing because you are able to make the game about bot lane.
Yeah. The thing I want to point out is, because I saw Peter Dunn tweeted about this, Dignitas technically have a winning record against Evil Geniuses on the year. Dignitas are 3-2.
Heyo.
Those games are all in the old roster, right? It's 2-0 from spring and then another win in week 1.
Heyo.
So this roster from Dignitas has not beaten Evil Geniuses. Like the week 4 and week 7 games, those were EG wins. So it's like, even if you like tried to take like certain stat leanings, it's like, that does not tell the actual picture here, right? The Dig wins are from the roster that was actually like, a top 5 level team, and that would have been more exciting. Sucks that everything kind of happened the way it did. But yeah, I feel like EG are like really heavy favorites. I think this is probably the most lopsided matchup of the entire playoff run. Like after C9 TL go to the lower bracket in fights like Golden Guardians, like that'll be a closer match. Golden Guardians TL will be closer than EG Dig.
I think depending on how teams look in the Immortals matchup, maybe that'd be the only other one, but that's 2 weeks away. So
yeah,
at least for round 1 and for the early part of the upper bracket, like after this, it's going to be a lot of bangers, but I expect this to be EG favored.
Yeah, I think it's really EG favored. I mean, I fully agree with you with the Dignitas bot lane take. The one thing that like makes me feel negative on it is I literally think we said the exact same thing in spring before they got super dumpstered 3-0 by 100 Thieves. We're like, but the bot lane has been good though.
They were playing the FBI hooey.
Yeah, that's fair. But I mean, it is like, it's not the same, right? It's not the most lane dominant lane that they're going up against. So I do think that the matchup is better.
Yeah.
But I also think one of the things that's working against them is that like everyone looking at this matchup is going to go, ooh, but what about Neo and Afro? And then you have the ability, if you
coach is thinking that too.
Exactly, right? Where you're going to be drafting around that. You're going to be banning out some of their priority picks. You're going to be, drafting winning lanes or playing a style in which you can actually path towards bot. And like, guess what? Shizuke's really good at moving around the map. Svenskeren and Contracts are good at playing early game junglers and playing aggressively to that side. So I do think that is the way in for Dignitas, but I still think it's a long shot because it feels like it is the only way in. And that is always going to bite you in best of 5 where it comes to that point and everyone will prep for it.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think the solo lanes, we're talking about like, sometimes you can win a lane so hard that the game kind of becomes about that. I expect that to be happening mostly in the top triangle of the map where they just play so aggressively for EG and they're going to outskill their opponents. They all play really lane dominant. Almost all of them are highest in 4% in CSD and all these numbers that say like, hey, they're going to be aggro and you have to stop them. And I just don't think Dignitas have the tools to stop them 3 times in a 5-game series.
And that's why I hope, like, I don't think that it'll happen, but I really do hope that Dignitas just kind of like throws it all to the wind and just goes super aggressive, bring out some spicy picks, try some stuff. Because my frustration with Dignitas is like, they can look good in games, but often when they look bad, they look so bad because they end up like just kind of sitting back and waiting to lose. And this is what happened in spring as well. And a lot of their losses is that, when they are outmatched, they stop being proactive, right? Because they generally, like in spring, it was like they were super reliant on Dardoch to get something happening. If Dardoch got behind, the team just kind of like waited till their Nexus blew up. And it does feel somewhat similarly this split. I do think Acadian is like a little bit of that X factor. And then maybe if your bot lane is like getting 2v2 kills, like that's a way in. But largely, like as a team, they are not super proactive from behind. And that has always been kind of one of their Achilles heels. So like I do hope that they play an aggressive series, that they really take their chances. Because I think for sure, sure you get blasted by EG if you let EG dictate the pace of the game, because that's where they're strongest.
Alrighty, we all 3-0.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
If I could give it a 4-0, I would.
All right,
It's gonna
C9.
take one game longer. If you give it a 2-0, that would be win a best of 5.
They
in 2
just
games.
forfeit after they forfeit after the second game.
Svenskeren will be 2-0, then Contracts will win the last game.
Okay.
That's still 3 games. Just
Yeah,
so you know.
yeah.
Cloud9 versus TL. Team Liquid, they're in the upper bracket. They won against EG recently. They have
This is the
their
most reserved hype I've ever heard in my life.
okay. So they have their intended starting roster back together. They have a tremendous amount of talent. I am not sure if I am just like more negative on this team than the average, or if it was just more like I was getting a lot of fan response. But like I tweeted out, hey, they're 2-10 versus top 4 teams, right? They like haven't beaten Cloud9 all year. Like I don't really expect this to go their way. I do think that yes, they have incredible talent, but I also think that all of the other crap that has gone on around TL with roster swaps, with Jat leaving, with like drama, health issues, like they have had a lot of roadblocks. And I do think that handicaps you. Like even if everything is like super happy now, you have lost weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks of practice, right? So I just think they are at a significant disadvantage as a result. And I tweeted that out, and like there was so many responses as far as like, those games don't count. Like they were with other people, or like they didn't have the full roster together. And I'm like, yeah, but that hurts them. And I also think that there was a reason that they made these swaps, right?
Yep.
And even with like Santorin, it seemed mostly like people were less negative on Jenkins and more negative on Armeo. But even with Santorin, they are 1-5 against top 4 teams. So it's literally the same record as with Armeo. Some like a lot of those games were with Jenkins, but I think Jenkins Santorin was the pair that won. I think that Alphari only played like 2 games versus top 4 teams and lost them both.
Yep.
So it's like there are a lot of mitigating factors as to why they finished the way they did and why they looked the way they did in summer. But I think it counts against them. I think it hurts them.
I mean, you look at Alphari in particular, because like he's the one missing piece that was subbed out and came back in. Like he hasn't won a single game on any new meta champion. Lee Sin in season opener lost to TSM. Dr. Mundo, when he came back, lost to Golden Guardians. And then he has his Viego game against Dignitas, loses that one. These are the teams you're losing to when you're playing champs that weren't released in 2015, right? Like, if the problem is, right, like, we need to bench Alphari for whatever reason, like, whether it's motivation or whatever, and he's not scrimming with the teams, he's not getting real practice on new things. He wasn't even playing Academy, right? Like, this is a problem, right? And it's not Alphari's dumb, Alphari's bad, Alphari's whatever, but to your point around losing practice,
You lost practice on
he
new
has
champs,
not practiced on the new stuff. He's still playing Jason, Camille, and he had a Malphite game. Like, cool. Champs from a while ago. And that's fine if he can make it work. And Viego got nerfed for lanes, and Gwen's been nerfed to where most teams aren't playing anymore. Lee Sin got nerfed. So, like, it might be fine.
Yeah.
But, like, the evidence shows that, like, those missed reps mattered.
Yeah. Yeah, practice matters a lot.
I feel like, especially when you start looking at the actual matchup versus Cloud9 and how they lost the finals in spring, it was a lot of hard targeting Alphari and saying, like, if you don't get Alphari going, you don't win as many games. And they were able to do that. And
he got first blooded all 5 games, I believe.
First blooded, I think once it was actually
it just happened
it was
in the lane.
It was Armeo in the lane,
Yeah,
but it was a 2v2 top.
Yeah.
And so all the kills happened in top lane, in top jungle skirmishes. So there were some times where I think you could say, hey, I'm a believer that if Santorin was in there, they would have played differently. Not that C9 would have lost, but at least like those early situations would have gone
they
different.
lost them twice, right? They lost them.
They lost
with
3-1
Santorin
with
as well.
him, and then
Yeah, so I don't think Santorin necessarily changes that series, but at least some of those situations.
Yeah.
And moving forward, you hope that you can shore that up, because otherwise, if I'm C9, I'm going to do it again. If it worked the first X amount of times we played each other, I'm going to target Alphari, keep him down. Fudge has a good champion pool. He's been getting better and better. Blabber's good about camping lanes and getting top and stuff. Unless Jensen starts hulking out more, Tactical has been better. And so if you're playing Caitlyn Thresh and you're like, go camp Alphari, dude, lose your turret at 8 minutes, like maybe that can change the game state and give them more options. I think that's, otherwise, I think C9 looks a little pretty favored.
I mean, to me, it's like so easy though. Like where you're looking at Dignitas, like if they have to win, it has to be this.
Yeah,
TL could easily win. Like you could just be like, Jensen has a series that's the best that he's had lately. Okay, you just could win off that.
Yeah,
Tactical and Core JJ play some of their best 2v2 in a while. Okay, they could win off.
Blabber
that.
and Perks die at Scuttle 3 times.
Yeah, like Alphari plays Camille and he's up 40 CS and split pushes you to death. Okay, they can win. Like there's so many ways to see it. But like my problem is not the individuals, it's the whole and how they work together. together. They have consistently shown that they are a team, like, and this kind of goes back to like the soul of the LCS conversation that Peter Dunn was having, where they just wait for their opponents to make mistakes. And like, even with advantages, they often play fairly passive. I do think that like that has been something that's been consistent for them through summer, is that even when they are playing from ahead, they are happy to just kind of like sit back and scale, and it lets their opponents dictate the pace of the game, and it lets their opponents, you know, look for the plays that they want and have opportunities to come back in games where they otherwise might not be able to. And I do think that really just works against you when you're playing against an aggressive team. And if they can fix these issues, they could be great, but it's a big if. And something else that was really interesting, I'll just hop this in, then you guys can go. When I was on Next Level earlier, we recorded that earlier today, and Contracts had pointed out basically, like, you know, he felt like Meteos was there too, so obviously some junglers. They're talking about the difference between Armeo and Santorin, and how they basically felt like, you know, Armeo plays for himself, getting himself ahead, Santorin plays for his lanes. But Contracts was pointing out that like one of the things that he felt that Santorin was hurting on in these most recent set of games from missing practice was that he was playing for his lanes, but in an inefficient manner. Like, he would be too early, like he wouldn't have the timing correct when he would show up to a lane, and thus he had missed the camp that he could have killed and then shown up to the lane. So he felt that was one of the key issues that Santorin had on this most recent weekend, where he was kind of progressively getting behind because his pathing just wasn't as efficient as it could have been, largely probably because of practice.
I think for me, one of the other things for Team Liquid that is a bit scary beyond any of that stuff is also their drafts have been very hit or miss for me. I did not love that time, you know, that they had no damage with the Lulu. They fixed it the next time around where they had the Lulu Olaf and a little bit clearer of a game plan. It was a really nice counter pick. But then this weekend again, they have like basically 3 lanes that do nothing with Viego, where you have Jace, which, you know, he wants to push in, he wants pressure, but you don't actually like chain gank for Jace or anything like that.
You often don't tower dive because they just hide from the poke.
Right. You usually just want to make it as uninteractive as possible so Jace can slam lane. Azir doesn't want to do anything.
Yep.
And then you have Ezreal Leona.
Yeah.
What are you laughing at?
I mean,
Swatting invisible flies, I think.
They had Ezreal Leona, and it's like, where do you go to actually get advantages?
You
like you outscale and you just hard farm and you hope you win the game.
Yep.
And then Jensen actually did a great job following all the roams that happened.
the Azir, he was playing out of his mind.
He played so good that game. And because their comp literally does nothing but like try and poke you and has to get to objectives first and like, you know, doesn't actually do anything.
Yep.
It didn't matter. Didn't matter that your Azir was like 6-1 or 8-2, whatever he was. So I think there's pretty consistent draft issues for me with Team Liquid.
Yep.
Whereas C9, like, I generally like the drafts. They play one way.
Even the Yasuo stuff, I thought they had some bad drafts in some of their losses.
The Diana
recently,
Yasuo
too.
game, I thought was fine if I remember.
I'm trying to think of the exact comp, but I just remember feeling like the other team basically had so much peel that it was like into a thresh, and there was like exhaust, and there was all these different confounding factors that it ended up feeling like they could essentially only go for the enemy ADC, who had so many like simple ways to survive. Like they basically had one effective Diana Yasuo combo where it was in like bottom lane Tribrush, where, you know, like Blabber went in and Perks had ran into the Dragon Pit and was able to follow up all over the wall. And that was like it the whole game.
And it was a cleanup. Like, they'd already won the fight, basically.
Yeah.
And it's like, they're running away. I'll flash. Don't worry. And then they got 2.
I thought I remember something really troll happening in that game that made
I
me.
can't
so.
remember exactly what, but I just remember feeling like kind of adverse to the comp, just thinking that like I was watching how they were interacting, and I'm like, I just don't see how you consistently kill people.
That was the game where they got TP advantage on top lane, right? The impact TP down, lost all his farm. Fudge held his TP, got a huge lead. They got the 2 kills. They had TP advantage, and then their macro for the next 5 minutes was so bad. I lost my mind on it. Wasn't on the analyst, but like behind the scenes. They just like trade for top turret to get Danny back into the game, get him some gold. Then they try to attack where the global is. You know, it's like, you have TP advantage. Where should you go? Where the TP advantage is, so that way Jizuke can TP in, and you don't ever attack the AD carry in the long lane that you just killed and blew a bunch of summoners. Like, I lost my mind that they didn't repeat kill. I blame that way more than the draft. I'm like, what are you doing for these 5 minutes?
Okay.
I lost my mind.
I mean, it's why C9
And I
is
mean,
the
yeah,
4th best team, right?
that's why they struggle.
They are, in fact, inferior to EG and 100 Thieves across the season and TSM, and that's where they stand. A really quick point, because I looked it up, talking about playing not selfishly enough in the jungle. The jungle meta, in terms of like what people are actually picking, what they're actually playing, what's on the Rift, Viego and Diana are 1st and 3rd most played junglers. Like, they are selfish junglers. They are ones where they are the carry. They want to have gold. Diana like is going to go in and do 700 damage, which is her ultimate. And Viego just right like he needs to scale up so he can get the resets to keep going. So it's like you actually need to play those champions greedily in order to play them well.
Olaf as well. I feel like if you
he's
don't
like number
have
5.
if you don't have incredibly high farm on Olaf, you just like you have to play from ahead of the pace of the game, right? Because if you are squishy when you pop your ult and run in, which is literally the only way to play the champion, you just die. And yeah, I think that kind of leads into another point, which is just that though C9, I think over the course of the summer split has not been fantastic by any means. I do think that they have been getting better, and I think that is largely in part to the fact that the current meta just fits Blabber way better, right? Like when he went to MSI and he's trying to play, Rumble and Morgana and these types of champions, he never really looked very comfortable on him. When he's playing these melee, like bruisery, like run at you style champions, when he can play like Lee Sin and Zid and Olaf, like that is his bread and butter. That's how he won 2 MVPs. And over the last couple of weeks, I think he has looked so much better. It was like I was watching a different jungler play, like from spring, and then here's our MVP. This is the guy, and then you watch from MSI to like the first like 5-6 weeks of summer, and it was like, who is this player? Like, like he just didn't look like himself. He didn't look dominant as he has always been in the LCS for so long. And I do think that was largely a reflection of the meta. So I think that has worked pretty heavily in the favor of Cloud9 coming into playoffs, where it's like his best champs are good to go.
You have serious predictions?
3-1 Cloud9. Not thinking about it much. I'm just like, I think they're substantially the better team. So I'll just go 3-1.
Yeah, I'm kind of sitting in the same realm. Like, I'm wondering, if I'm really just underrating TL and they'll have stuff kind of good to go. But I do feel like it's pretty favored for Cloud9. I do feel like 3-0, 3-1, around there. Like, but I hope that I'm wrong, and I hope that TL can really like have improved, because then you do have another legit championship threat, and it's going to make playoffs so exciting.
I think, there's historical basis for feeling C9 is favored in this matchup no matter what. And then with the current form of the two teams, I would still go C9 as well.
Cloud9 have won the last 5 games straight against TL. 2 of those being game 4 and 5 of the finals, but every game of summer as well. And not all that's with the roster, right? So it's a biased stat in the first place, but they have had their number.
3-2, I'm going. I think it's close still. I think it's going to go back and forth, because I don't think C9 is close to their championship form either, or at least like relative to the field. So I don't feel confident in C9 as I predict them. Almost as much due to them as Team Liquid.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, Cloud9 obviously beat them in 2 best-of-5s in spring. They won all their games against them in summer. So just based on that, you have to favor them. But it's going to be an exciting one. I'm really interested in that series, because I think it's going to dictate so much of people's opinions going forward. Like, are Cloud9 and TL really championship contenders? And I think that series is going to tell us a lot. All right, we have an anchor question here. This one comes from Matthew Stevens.
Hey guys, big fan of the show. I was thinking about how American sports like basketball do best of series, where they play a single game per day for a week or so. What if the LCS or an international finals was 3 best of 3s spread out across a single weekend? How do you think strategy would evolve?
There's this other American sport that I like quite a lot called football, and it has a single event, single game.
What do they call it?
It's called the Super Bowl,
Oh,
and it's pretty popular most of the time. It rolls
haven't
around.
heard of it.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go with I like best of 5.
But his question at the end of the day is, how
If
do you
it
think
happens.
strategy would evolve? So it's happening in this reality, Mark.
I'm not watching it anymore.
What if it happened?
It's too many games.
You're just quitting.
It's too many games. Too long of a weekend. I don't have that time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, answer his actual question as far as how does strategy evolve. I think it's a cool question. First of all, I think it would be exciting. I think the realist in me is just like, venues are incredibly expensive. Having all of this stuff operated over a course of multiple days is just astronomically more expensive, and that is one of the big reasons that people don't just like extend an event, is that it's like when you have the Bird's Nest or like X crazy huge venue, you have the Staples Center, guess what? It's really expensive to run the event. And if you do 3 days instead of 1, it's even
roughly
more
doubles
expensive.
the price of the event, because you're doubling the days because of the setup.
Azael, you told me that wasn't the question. The question was, how do you think
I am
strategy would
going
evolve?
to answer. So I'm saying the realist in me is saying I don't think it would happen, but I actually think it would be really cool. goal. I think as far as how strategy would evolve, you would have to have more of a progression of strategies, right? We have seen a lot of like really critical series dictated by, it's like, ooh, Zyra Ashe comes out and that dictates a series, like, or ooh, there's like, now it's Caitlyn Jace and it's this hard pushing meta at Worlds and Ardent Sensor when everyone was trying to do scaling Lulu Cog. That sort of stuff will be important, but it would not just like run you over in a series. So I do think as far as like the strategic aspect of it, you would have to have like a kind of like a long plan, in that it's like, okay, we're going to play the first one, standard. The second one, we're going to be throwing out this cheese. The third one, we're going to be doing this. It would have to be like kind of a longer extended plan. I also think that the reality would be there would be far fewer upsets, because if you come out day one with your crazy strategy and you win best of 3 against like IG or, EDG or whoever, RNG, whoever the big dog is in that tournament, and then they get to go back to the drawing board and figure out what they want to do against it day 2. So unless you can like, again on day 2, have that like crazy thing that they don't expect and execute perfectly and win 2 out of 3 of those best of 3s, it would be so hard to win. So I think upsets would become less common.
I'm pretty much with you. I think strategically, you actually wouldn't see anything too, like, as an outside observer. I think for the people involved, it's going to be radically different, that you can review their
Prep
level
would be
ones
hard.
and what's that?
Prep would be hard.
Yeah. I mean,
but you get to go, you have an analyst go through each player's pro view, and you're like, okay, now we go on to the next match the next day, and it's like, okay, here's what we have learned. Here's some specific you can try to review.
So I think like for people working, it's going to be really different. But for the viewer, I don't think you're going to see like substantially more cheese, for example, because you're still like, the reason that you do cheese is try and grab a win, or like you're losing, you need to throw a wrench in the plan. Like, oh, this thing's really ridiculous. Throw Zyra at it, or the MF for the Zyra. Yeah. I mean, you would still do that. Those kinds of things would still happen in this thing. You wouldn't get more of them for no reason. I think it would pretty much be the same.
What about second best of 3? You just won the first one, and now you have a series.
But people already. I'm saying
it's a 12-hour break instead of a 12-minute break. But how much are you getting done on those hours that you weren't doing the week heading into that match?
Yeah,
I think a lot of the time it's not like, oh god, we like prepped so much extra stuff now, because you're not getting that many extra games in this format, and like you're realistically gonna be like, oh, we lost to this thing. Do we need to ban it or not? That's kind of the question that you ask coming out of those drafts. Usually, out of those games, you're like, hey, this thing was a problem. That looked like to me. Was it a problem for you?
Yeah.
No, you can handle it. Okay, what are we doing? And you would just do that again.
There's one thing you could do. The one minor thing is you'd have enough time to like say, okay, I wasn't ready for like him to bring out Jace or whatever, right? Okay, what are the counters? It's like, well, you have enough time then to like confer with your team and then like practice the lane counter. You're not going to get a bunch of scrims in, but it's like, okay, you can go, hey, Kumo, like let's play some games, and like get a bunch of like, we'll make it up, Camille Jace games in. Like, okay, I think I can play the lane better now.
Less
right?
panic
that
bans.
You can do.
Yeah.
Coming into day 2 that you can't do in the 12-minute turnaround.
Yeah.
So like there are some specific things you can do, and we can see that, but it would be, I think, pretty small. Like maybe that really gets far-reaching, but that's kind of the limit to me.
Yeah.
Less panic bans, I think, is what I'd say is the strategic evolution.
It's cool. I mean, it's a cool thought process. The one thing I immediately think of, though, that would really suck is that you do like your world's opening ceremonies and you're all hyped up, and there's an hour of intro, and then there's 2 games. It's a 2-0 in your first best of 3, and I have to wait till the next day. That would be such a deflation.
Yeah, and then you bought tickets for Sunday, but that doesn't happen because the first team won the first 2 best of 3s, and you're like, all right, well.
And that happens with the NBA and whatnot. And okay, we didn't have a game 7 piece, whatever. But yeah, the fact that like things have a like set time, right? Like all conventional sports except for like cricket are like time based. I guess.
Well, and they own the stadiums,
and that's also a big deal. Yes, owning the stadium means you don't have to rent it out. But yeah, there's a lot of logistical hurdles, but we don't have to keep belaboring that.
All right, we got a Twitter question here. This one comes from Daniel the Bear 42. Just got done listening to this week's dive, and I love the discussion about Amumu at the end. He's always been one of my favorite champions, even if he's not played a lot. My question is, if you had full creative authority, what would you do to make him viable? And so I don't know if you were on this one. We were talking about basically that Amumu is good at low elo, but has traditionally struggled at pro and at challenger level, where people more aggressively invade and kind of like really punish some of his more clear weaknesses, even though he is a strong team fighter.
Yeah, you basically do some and actually, this is a spoiler. We'll see if they even get to it, because these projects get picked up and taken down all the time. As like there's a mid-tier scope happening actually with one of the Riot designers, where they're like, let's try to fix the gigantic elo skew with Amumu. This happened with like Azir, and it worked pretty well. This happened with Aurelia recently, and she actually flattened out to where she's viable in pro and for regular people. So that scope of work for Amumu. Generally speaking, the TLDR for any of this type of work is like, make early game better, make late game worse, tends to fix good and low elo, bad and high elo skew. So like really a more powerful in late game because that's more represented in average elo. So you do the opposite here for Amumu. So it'd be like, oh, how good are his base stats? Like how much damage does W and E actually deal? Oh, nowhere close to Olaf stuff. Oh, okay, well maybe Tiander should be like an actual ability. And the fact that he has good damage rank ups on all 3 abilities to the point where like you can actually conceivably max any one of those first means he just scales so well with levels, which you get and matter in silver and don't matter in pro. So like that's the kind of stuff you'd tweak.
Sounds good to me.
Ship it. All right. Thank you, Phreak.
Yeah.
Plus, you just revealed, so you may be fired. We may never see Phreak again. All right. I think so, too. We have one final thing here, an Apple review. This one comes from Dartagnan or
D'Artagnan?
D'Artagnan? Okay. Dartagnan MD, I believe it is.
Dr. Dartagnan.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you, Dive, for saving my promos. Imagine this. I'm in my plat promos. I'm a jungle main, and it's game 5. The tension is rising. I don't know what to pick anymore because my Nocturne got banned, and I'm bronze on every other champ. I'm panicking, thinking maybe it's time to bust out my tank Syndra build. But luckily, the Dive was playing on my other monitor, and MarkZ starts talking about how busted Lulu jungle is. I pick it with hesitation, and I go 0-0-20, just as God intended. Thank you, MarkZ, for saving my promos.
I will take credit for this, but I will also say I did not say that on the dive. I also saw some of the comments in that one being like, I can't believe Mark is advocating for Lulu jungle. I wasn't. I was saying I wanted Lulu changed so that she was a good jungler because she's not right now.
Don't you watch the champion spotlights? She's literally in there as a jungler.
Yeah, when it was made 6 years ago or whatever.
I mean, more than that. But yeah, I ended up getting like a first blood, like level 2 gank. And then I'm just like running around with double buffs, like up 300 gold.
Yeah. So if you're one of those commenters, get your ears checked because I never said you should play Lulu jungle, including the person who left this Apple review. But I'm glad you won the promos.
But watch the spotlight, though. It has Lulu jungle.
Yeah.
It's Pog.
Well, you heard it from Mark. He thinks Lulu jungle is meta, and we're going to see it in the playoffs this week. That'll wrap it up for us for now. Thanks again, Honda, for making this episode possible. And remember, you can watch us on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button, youtube.com/LCS. You can also check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor.fm. You can watch Mark doing a queen wave. Phreaks is more regal. Much more regal, actually. Please send us your questions on Twitter. Use the hashtag #TheDiveLOL. And finally, send us your takes. Send us your questions on Anchor.fm. We just might react to it here on The Dive. The LCS playoffs start this weekend with some banger matches. EG going head-to-head with Dignitas 2 p.m. this Saturday with Cloud9 and TL 2 p.m. this Sunday, or 1 p.m. on this Sunday. It's going to be quite a weekend. Don't miss it. We'll see you there.